everyone, it's Patricia. Welcome back to the Bad Chinese Teacher podcast. We're continuing this week with part 2 of the Model Congress Alumni Special, where I had a chance to gather with a few high school friends to talk about our experiences in Model Congress and the impact it's left in our lives in the 10 years since we graduated. If you didn't catch the first part yet, hop over to episode 8 and listen to that first before coming back here. It's a good one. Special thanks to our guests Kylie Brogel, Rachel Casella, Gio Esposito, Nicole Hobbs, and Katrina Perito for coming on the show. As always, you can also check out the show notes at badchinesesteacher.com for links and additional info on the topics covered on today's episode, as well as to find out more about our guests. All right, without further ado, here's part 2. Enjoy.
You made me think of two things, is that we were really treated like adults in high school. At sophomore year, we were all pretty much traveling internationally, and I think like being a part of the choir program and Model Congress, because we were representing like our country as we traveled and kind of learned very quickly how to act, and like all the things you mentioned, we were like little adults. And then also, I think whether you were the most active member or the least active member, Patella cared deeply about all of us, and it was well known. He cared about how we did. It seemed like he lived in his classroom.
Yeah. There were a lot of couches. So.
I cannot imagine the number of hours that he has spent and still spends, just like doing all of this work that is insane. Even categorizing, like going back and looking at all of the photos online.
Hundreds and hundreds of photos.
Thousands
of photos for each conference.
Right.
For each conference.
And they were so well organized by date, by conference, by, day within each conference. I cannot imagine. And like, it doesn't matter who you were. He knew your name. Like you've mentioned, there was an accountability that made, because he cared, you cared, and there was mutual respect along the way. And the stage was set with very few words. I think that's kind of how he ran his classes too. No, but like it was, I don't know if the plan was written on the board, but you like knew the plan. The plan was carried out.
It
really did.
We had an inordinate number of people who did really, really well in those APUS classes. Yeah. The system worked.
Absolutely.
I was not one of them. But keep the ball rolling.
As a teacher, like what is the main factor that made the clock tick, and it's planning. Like if anything, there was so much planning, and I don't think that can be understated. And then you could kind of learn that from him, and you put that into your life, and you're like, all right, I have to do it. Looks, he makes it look easy, but there's a lot going on. And I think you guys as section leaders, as presidents, vice presidents of all these clubs, learned that quickly.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm going to jump into Chinese mode a little bit just because the name of the podcast, but I think one thing that I learned as a teacher, coming from a culturally Chinese background, the idea of teaching within Asian societies is that, like, the teacher is supposed to to do the absolute most, right? Even if they don't have to. And the philosophy behind that is because there's this belief that, like, students are children, even if they're teenagers, but students are children, and if they're children, they don't know anything. They need to be led, they need to be taught, and the adult in the room is responsible for all of that, right? And so, like, if you look at a lot of Asian classrooms, I don't really see something. I mean, mock trial debate obviously exists in Asia, but the way in which, like, these debate clubs have always been, no matter the school, have always been very student driven because of the nature of the activity. But very rarely, from an Asian perspective, do you see students taking the lead and the teacher taking a step back, right? Because I think if you were to walk into Patella's classroom, again, like, probably more emphasized if you're coming from a cultural context where, like, the role of the teacher is to stand in the front and lecture, and the students are just there to absorb. You would look at what Patella's doing, and you'd be like, is he teaching?
Yeah.
He's not saying anything? But the students are saying a lot. So the students are running, are they teaching themselves? Because that's not good. But then you realize, like, I mean, you could say the phrase, the students are teaching themselves, can hold a lot of weight to it, for better or for worse. But I feel like, given what we're saying about, like, being able to be thrown, like, a mock trial packet, a moot court packet, or whatever, and be like, here's do with it what you will. That in itself is such a valuable learning experience. So there's that piece of it. And obviously, like, the logistics of, like, now speaking from the logistical perspective, it's enough of a job as is. And so I'm not mad that Patella did not, like, straight up coach us all the time, especially since, again, like, there was such a legacy at BHS. It was almost as if, like, each generation wanted to preserve the quality of the program. And so we wouldn't let each other slip. And there's so much power in that. But there was that, him being able to, knowing that we were in good hands because he had the system and we could, thrive in that. But also, one thing that kept occurring to me as we were talking was that, like, with Model Congress, maybe this is specific to our program, but you really felt seen. Like, I think, especially with that many kids, especially in a debate, and I tell my kids this all the time, that, like, if you're in a room with, like, 17 kids, it's really easy if you don't talk with them the first night to just kind of, like, spend your whole time as, wall dressing for the rest of the conference. But I felt like within our program, even with that many kids, everyone felt seen,
And one thing we haven't really mentioned is he gave us room to fail, too. We were all talking about our successes this whole time, but the first time I did moot court, we did awful. Me and Sergey, we were the team. We did terrible. We went in, we were underprepared, and we didn't do the reading. We showed up figuring we could wing it, and we couldn't. And we did really poorly. We got eliminated, like, in the first elimination round. And it was like, okay, cool. And then that gave me the incentive to want to come back in the following fall and kick ass. Excuse me.
It's okay. You're good.
And do a good job. And so, right. But that was something that we had a lot of success in these things, but we did have the room to fail, which is a really important teaching opportunity. And the fact that that we were kind of in a hands-off environment, we were all okay to do well and to excel, but also when we saw that, hey, not putting in the time and the effort is not going to do you well, and that teaches a very valuable lesson too.
I was going to say that my first, like, real conference, like, Columbia was a day, so my first one, I think, was Princeton or
probably Yale.
Yeah. I didn't go to Yale because I had swimming. Obviously, story of my life. If I wasn't there, I had swimming. But no, whatever it was, I went to go in full, and I got the bill, and, like, the format was so weird. Like, it didn't even look like a bill. It was just, like, all these words. I was like, what is this person doing? They didn't even follow the right format. Like, this is ridiculous. So I was like, I'm going to get up there and talk about this because I could just spend 20 minutes talking about the format alone and not even the content. Because, there was a format you had to follow. I was like, they're not going to respect parliamentary. So I got up there.
This is a Katrina thing.
And
For all the listeners, this is very on brand for Katrina.
Plus, it was nonsense. But I got up there and I just started talking, and I was like, where is the preamble? Where are these things? And then it turned out that I had not been given a copy of the bill. I was given a copy of the fact sheet that went along with the bill. So I gave a whole speech against the bill, not having read the bill. I mean, a lot of the points were still valid, but, like, a bunch of people, like, after my speech were like, well, actually, like, some of those things were addressed in the bill if you actually read it. And I was like, oh, man. So I think I left the room because I was so upset, and I was, like, about to cry and stuff. And Patel was like, what's wrong? And so I told him, and he was like, well, that's embarrassing. And I was like, yeah, it was. Thank you for that. And he was like, but I bet you don't want to feel that way again, right? And I was like, yeah. And even though that was kind of, like, more of an honest mistake rather than, like, not preparing or something. But I mean, I didn't prepare in that, like, I should have been more well informed, and it also kind of was humbling because that was my first conference, and I was like, I've been doing so great, like, I'm totally gonna talk in full because I've just been killing it in committee. I think I won an award in committee, but regardless, like, that was like, okay, so maybe I am not the best at this, and maybe I should just be quiet and, like, know what I'm talking about before I, like, get up in front of a crowd of 300 people and make a fool of myself. So, but he, like you were saying, like, he wasn't gonna. I was really scared also afterward. I was like, oh, he's like, that was so embarrassing for me and for the school. Like, he's totally gonna yell at me, and he was just kind of like, okay, yeah, like, that wasn't the best moment of the conference, but, like, you don't want to feel that way again. Okay, so just, like, think about that before you get up and talk. And I was like, noted.
I think also we've talked a lot about kind of Patella's seeing people and being a mentor to people. I didn't win an award until junior year, and I went to a bunch of conferences freshman and sophomore year, and obviously knew a lot. Like, I felt really prepared from our prep sessions, and I felt like my bills were good, and I felt like I talked in committee and did a good job, and so it was really frustrating. But it was also nice that I think he saw the potential in a lot of us, even when some of our peers were winning awards and doing other things, that it wasn't like, oh, well, you haven't won an award yet, so you're not someone who I'm going to invest any time in, or, tell you maybe this isn't your thing.
it is with two teachers in the room. I'll be interested to see your guys' perspective on this from the student end. Patella was a teacher. AP US History was kind of just the class you took, and we did it, and I didn't like it. I did not excel in it. And most people, by and large, who did well in Model Congress also tended to do well in AP US History, whether it was just an interest level or whatever. But I really did not excel in AP US History. And I imagine now that had to have been a struggle for Mr. Patella, who had known me the 2 years prior doing Model Congress, and I did moderately well. And, on occasion, he'd be like, I don't get it. I don't get how you can do well in this aspect, and boy, AP US History is not that for you. And yet it was something you needed to do. It was like a course I needed to take to do well and, graduate high school. And there was this kind of like divide where he had to play both sides of it, and I think he did it pretty well. He, accepted that history was not my strong suit, and most people it was who did Model Congress, and kind of did that, which I was grateful for, because if I kind of felt pounded down in the academic setting of AP US, it would have really affected me in Model Congress, because I would have felt like I was letting him down, and then I couldn't really succeed at either end. But looking back on it, yeah, AP US History is really hard for some people. And he really did kind of play two different roles. As a teacher and as advisor, it's not quite the same. And to see students that maybe you see do well in one aspect of you being a teacher and then struggle in something else, like, I don't know how someone approaches that.
Yeah, I think one fear that I had as a student, even in college, was like I always felt like if I did poorly in a class, it was a personal affront to the teacher. Like I was like personally offending them by how dumb I was.
Yeah.
And then you start teaching, and you're just like, this is the least of my problems. Because like one thing that like my kids will always say is like, so and so, such and such teacher hates me, and I'm just like, every time I'm like, they don't have enough energy to hate anyone.
We don't think enough about you.
No, it's too tiring. Like we have other things we need to do, okay? And I think one thing that's always really important to remember is that like teachers, if they're a good teacher, well, if they're not a bad teacher, they're always cheering for you in whatever aspect, whether it be something you're really good at or whether it's something is that you're struggling. I think I understand where Patel is coming from in that, like, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense for someone to be as good as they are in Model Congress and then, with AP US. But the thing is, like, AP US for us as well was a totally different ballgame. The way that he taught it as well, because it was just it was really like a lot of
Ken Burns.
Yes.
A lot of memorization.
It was a lot of memorization, and you can have debates on whether or not that's the most effective. And we all got 5s on the exam, speak for themselves. But like I think
I got a 2.
How did you get a 2?
Guys,
She just spent the last 5 minutes on how it wasn't her jam.
She wasn't that bad at it, though. She making it sound like she was going to fail out of the class, which was not the case.
I
Well,
might have
she
kept
was
it
not
to
passing.
myself, but I barely, which was hard. We were all high achievers. APUS in high school is the equivalent to like organic chemistry for me in college. It was a struggle and humbling, and we got through it, but I can only imagine the strife that I caused Patella, not because I didn't try. And that was the other thing, like, I tried, but I'm gonna maybe say content just wasn't piquing my interest, because I could memorize for science until the cows come home, but this...
Well, he just happened to teach social studies and do Model Congress.
Yeah.
Like that's, you can divide and say, okay, this is where this person's strength lies. I'm not going to judge students because they're great at this and like, mediocre at this. That's every human. Like you have your strengths and weaknesses, but you're not going to be like, oh, you're a bad representation of the club, obviously.
Yeah, and I think it's beyond him. I know because I took both Model Congress, APUS, and I also took Worldviews.
Oh, worldviews.
Worldviews.
TBT.
Honestly, one of my favorite classes, but a lot of people write it off as being like, that's the class where you just watch movies. But
It was a senior class, for
It
sure.
was a senior class.
really wanted to take that class and I
Yeah.
couldn't
I
get
know a
it.
lot of people who've talked about how much they enjoyed
Yeah.
it because it lets you confront your ideas about grander things. I mean,
Yes.
on
World
brand,
views.
world views, on brand with the Model Congress,
Yeah.
how we had to get really educated on political ideas and current event topics. With worldviews, it was like, oh, here's religion and life after death and all this
Yeah.
stuff. So think about it. And I think that was cool. That was a really unique thing. It was very on brand for Model Congress.
No, it really was. And I think it's like you got to see Patel as a person. Like, be different versions of himself as a teacher in those three different spheres. And so that makes sense, right? In the Model Congress, it's very much like the coaching thing. And in APOS, it was very much like this is preparing you to do well on the test. And then Worldviews was very much, let's do yoga, which is the thing that actually happened. We did yoga. But if that duality, if that multiplicity can exist in the teacher, then obviously they would not be surprised if it existed in students, right? I'm sure that like every teacher will look at a student and be like, this person is not a great language learner, but I've heard they're really great at science, right? And why would we expect them to be good at everything,
because we're expected to be good at everything. Or the feeling as a 14 to 18 year old that generally does well at a lot of things is I am actually expected to not only do well but excel in every aspect of my life, sports, theater, classes across all spectrums, and that was an affront that I found.
I do
in APUS history.
We were just very
we put pressure on ourselves. I don't
extremely competitive.
I don't feel like my teachers were ever like they were motivating me, but it wasn't like I wasn't getting good grades from my teachers. I wasn't getting good grades from my parents. Like I was getting good grades for myself, and I was like because I wanted to go to the schools that I wanted to go to, and I was like making a habit for myself.
It's actually kind of strange. I only know of this after I started teaching, but like we all took AP everything. It wasn't even just like you're a science person, you're going to take AP physics and then like standard English. It was like you take AP physics and AP English,
and AP Psych,
and all of that,
and 2 electives.
Like I tell my students that, and they're just like, "What kind of strange people did you go to high school with?" But like you're right. The pressure really came between ourselves.
Yeah, my parents did not care.
Neither did mine
at all.
My parents were just impressed that I did moderately well at anything. So there was no expectation to only continue to do what I was capable of. To all you juniors and seniors out there, I was probably in the crux more than the average on really excelling in some types of classes and struggling. And I don't regret taking AP English or AP Histories, but do they enrich me and my career as much as I thought they did when I was 17? Not really, in the reality of it. The other extracurriculars did, but, do things that make you feel good, that you enjoy, and that everything will fall in line. I was certain I was not going to get into a college that I wanted to if I didn't take AP English and AP Histories, which in hindsight, yes, it's 2020, probably was like real wrong on that one. And I pursued a career in science, which were things that I excelled at. And I might have had a little less stress in my life if I was able to acknowledge, like, it's okay to be okay in something and great at something else, and like it's okay to pursue that and not have expectations to be just as good as everybody else at everything.
I'd be interested to hear the perspective of someone who like, because I was going to say earlier that since a lot of people took APUS, like I would say it's one of the more like quote unquote accessible APs, like people who would maybe not have taken any other AP probably took APUS and then were exposed to Model Congress via that. And a lot of people joined junior year because they were like, oh, well, Patella knows all these people already in class. Like, he already has, like, a rapport with them and stuff. Like, I'm going to join Model Congress. And then also junior year, obviously, you're, like, starting to think about colleges. So it'd be interesting to hear the perspective of someone who would straight up just say, like, yeah, I joined Model Congress because I need an activity for college applications. Because I don't think any of us that was the case. Like, obviously
really involved already.
Yeah. But, like, I mean, obviously, that helped, right? Like, if you say, oh, I did Model Congress. Like, I go on these trips. I do these things. Like, it's really impressive on a college application. And I'm sure that there were people who were like, oh, this sounds like a smart club to join, so I'm going to join it. So I wonder if, like, those people joined and then were like, oh, this is just like a resume filler, or we're like, oh, actually, this is something I really enjoy. Like, it'd be interesting to hear from, like, that perspective of people.
I mean, nothing could be a home run every time. I definitely have
for sure.
students who are like that. I think it's one of those, like, yeah, it can be a Trojan horse in that sense, like it's because it's so, if you're coming in not knowing anything about Model Congress apart from like Patella teaches it and a lot of people are involved, and you're not in the debate world and you're not in the politics world, your experience and your impression of it becomes very personal because you don't have any other external like opinions informing whether or not this is something you actually like. I think I like it a lot as kind of like a character builder. I feel like that would be something that we would all agree on, because it really, like we've been saying this entire time, it really puts so many parts of yourself to the test, not just your knowledge in politics or debate, but also like how you coexist with other people, like being in a hotel room with 3 other people who you may or may not like, and then having to coexist with them and work with them and all of that. And so it's just such a great like package deal. I'm sure there's at least like one memory that's coming up in each of our minds right now with regards
I'm just
to
laughing
that.
at Nicole's face.
Well, but like, I mean, it also does like, I mean, like we've been saying like treat you like an adult, treat you like an adult, but it's true because it's like you were in your hotel room with 3 other people. It was like committee is at 8 tomorrow. You have to get yourself up,
Right.
get down there, be dressed. Like if you want to have breakfast, figure that out in that time
Go to the liquor
period.
store across the street at Princeton, which also had a deli that made the most amazing bacon, egg, and cheeses I've
You went
still
for the
ever
bacon,
had.
egg, and cheeses.
Obviously.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
it was upstairs.
But
to the
you know,
liquor
I mean,
store. I don't
you'd
know
be
why.
up like we'd go to dinner, a big group to go to dinner, take a while to go to dinner. We'd come back, everybody would chat with each other. You wouldn't go to bed early, so it was kind of like you have to organize your time. Like if you're gonna stay up till 2 a.m. chatting with your roommates, like that's fine, but you have committee at 8, so.
Also, good luck getting on the elevator. That was
Yeah.
the
That's
single-
still a problem.
Running
by
up
the
and
way.
down the stairs 20
And then,
Inaccessible.
and then having them be like, no, the stairs are shut off for
Yeah.
fire safety reasons. Yeah.
mode of
Who would have thought that
transportation.
putting like 1,000 teenagers in one hotel for 4 days is a great idea?
Where they all have to be at the,
The
same
poor
places
people-
at the same
The
the
time.
poor
same time.
people who were just staying in that hotel for like other reasons and wanted to take the elevator.
I made a mistake.
You did
I
have
regret
a
everything.
little bit of downtime. Like if you had never like gone to
Oh, yeah, we
Princeton
did
before,
stuff.
like, and if you didn't have older siblings that you could tour universities with, this was like your inside peek to some of the most prestigious universities, and you got to walk around town and feel really cool. And
We usually did visits too. Like when we went to
Yeah.
DC, we did like a monument tour. Like we would do like stuff outside of when you had breaks. So we'd like go down early and do stuff.
Yeah, and
sometimes.
that's actually such a rare thing because usually, like a lot of schools, unless they're flying in from very far, they don't come in a day early. And Patella really invested into making those trips very, very rich because a lot of advisors, some advisors just like will drop their kids off at opening ceremonies and then leave. Like just leave their kids. Yeah, I know. It's the most horrifying thing.
Where are the pictures? Taking pictures.
Exactly. What would they do?
How do they even know they go?
What? Why even bother? Right. So like,
Pictures didn't happen.
like you could definitely. I mean, again, given how like the students who do Model Congress tend to be so self-driven anyway, it's super tempting sometimes as the teacher to be like, just let them take care of it, and I'll just like sit and grade papers. And Patella actively chose not to do that. I think it's like there is most of your time at Model Congress is spent in committee, but like we said, it's like there's so much like the touring and the ability to be with people. I think a lot of folks who are shy and not very social. Self-referencing here, who do this for the first time. I think it wasn't for me as much about the debate because I thought I was the smartest person ever. Clearly not the case. And I thought that like this is an intellectual exercise that this would be my thing, but knowing how, again, it's that whole thing about being seen, right? And that in itself is such a scary thing sometimes because, a lot of the time when you just want to do your own thing, it's really easy to just be like, I got this, just leave me alone, let me do my thing, and I can just do this on my own without having to work with anyone else, right? Which again, given like when you're in committee, you oftentimes are the only person from your school. It's very easy to just kind of want to be a little invisible and not want to just like to interact. But I think it's still a 4-day trip and you're still amongst like you still have so much downtime, and that to an introvert is like the scariest thing. And again, what's so interesting about that was that the most that Patella ever said about that was just like encouraging this rapport. He literally told us, you must go say hi to people you don't know. And I remember when I heard that, I was just like, why are you trying to tell me what to do, man? Like, why
Like,
are you...
no.
No.
Even like
What does
sitting
that
in the
have
front
anything to do
row
with
at
anything?
opening.
Yeah.
That was
I
always
had my kids do
something
that
where it was like
too.
you have to go to the front of the room for the opening ceremony. You're not just going to sit in the back, especially at like Harvard where there's over 1,000 kids. Where it was like you could sit in the back and just goof around. He was like, no, you're up front. Like you're going to make a good impression with the people who are organizing because you're representing the school, and you need to be a good representative.
Yeah, so many just like soft skills that were being taught at the same time, and it's just like, this doesn't come, like Rachel said, this doesn't come without like having a well-oiled. This program has been around at BHS since 1993, 4.
94, I think.
Yeah, and the first model
Marginally younger than us.
Yeah,
It can purchase alcohol.
Oh, God.
and the thing is, like, I think the first Model Congress conference ever was 1993 at Yale, and so BHS has been doing Model Congress as long as Model Congress has been in existence, and Patella has been at the head of that for such a long time.
Sure. He's also a Yale alum, so he was probably like on the fast track for that
plugged
too.
in.
Yeah.
Like as soon as they heard about it, he was like, "Okay, I am one town over, and
We'll be there.
and we'll be there in 10 minutes."
Yeah. What was your guys' favorite conference?
Oh, Harvard for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like we said, the special programs were a lot more fun, and like I was saying, you know, I mean, I think this was the case for a lot of people here, but like it wasn't the only thing that I did, and at that point, like all the stuff that happened earlier in the year, like I always had swimming. Like Yale was always in the middle of swim season. Even Princeton was right at the end of swim season. And, like, I was in a leadership position there, like, you know, as a captain for that as well. Mm-hmm. So, like, by the time I got to Harvard, it was kind of like, okay, well, now I've moved into, like, the Model Congress phase of my year where, like, I'm still doing swimming, but, like, Model Congress is, like, kind of, I could really focus on Model Congress at that point. So, if anything I was doing earlier in the year, it was kind of like, and I'm also, like, in championships for swimming and stuff, whereas, like, Harvard, it was just kind of, and it was really fun, and you know, it was in Boston, so it wasn't like the travel for Princeton, because like Princeton Model Congress was in DC, which is like,
it was far.
Yeah, why? But they were just like really excited.
The nation's capital.
I know, but
Princeton, New Jersey, I mean, just the most compelling place.
well, yeah, but like it was a lot, just like logistically. I mean, Princeton Model Congress, you know, took a lot longer to get there. We went on a bus. Like, well, at Harvard, we were there like pretty quickly, and you got to really, you know, take advantage of like being in Boston and stuff. So that's why I like that one the best. But. And my decor homies, so.
I might be in the minority in saying I actually liked regular Model Congress better than the special programs. Like, I definitely preferred the committee over decor or moot court. I think that was probably just kind of the person that I am, because you didn't have to do as much work. Like,
Context, Gio is very charismatic and really can command a room very well, which is
true.
Much more accessible in a committee session than in decor.
Yeah,
well, thank you. But the other thing was you could go in and look at somebody's bill and in 2 minutes have like 4 ideas to talk about, and you didn't have to do any prep work really.
Major
And this is
procrastinator.
also before the ubiquity of smartphones. So like you might have that one guy with an iPhone, like a Gen 1
That
iPhone.
guy.
That one guy who'd be like, well, actually, you just lied about that statistic. But I always felt like, you know, that was a little bit more in my wheelhouse, because it was just like you didn't have to do as much legwork. So I think Princeton was probably my favorite. Just being in DC, there was so much to do. DC is such a cool town, and and that was cool. And you're a little bit further away. You feel like you're more under your own kind of
That's true,
auspices, and I don't know. I think that was probably my favorite conference.
I think Princeton Moot Court was my favorite
At Princeton, New
conference.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Princeton. But Harvard will always have a very special place in my heart. And I live right across the river from the Prudential Center, and I get to look
Nice.
at it every day. And it's always like very fond memories of being over there.
Yeah, I remember walking through the Pru when I was in college, and like, because that will always be what I associate the Pru with now. Is like,
Totally.
yeah, it's changed a lot, by the way. There's like
It
has.
has.
It has, but
Not in my heart. I live nowhere near it. Yeah, I'm gonna mimic the sentiment. Probably Harvard. It had the most special programs. It was definitely my niche area. It was a city, but a level of comfort. Yeah, and it was just like a really dynamic time with your friends, and probably specifically Harvard senior year, which is when we were at our peak competitiveness, and like ready. It was your last hurrah, like as your team that you've been working with for
That
4
was our last
years.
conference.
Yeah, it was the last
And
conference.
there was nobody held back, as they should not have, and it was great.
I liked them all.
Aw.
They all like offered something a little different.
Yeah, it's true.
We also were very good. Like, not to mention, not to brag, but we also were the best class that I think that's ever gone through the school. We had a ridiculous number. First off, we were always really active in it. I mean, we went combined. Just the group of 9 presidents went to over 100 conferences in our 4 years. So yeah, that's like a stat he still cites. And also, our picture is still on the board. Just FYI to everybody.
Well, also we're on,
and our Moot Court trophies are still in the windowsill. So there is like that really strong legacy idea that you don't really get in a lot of high school programs. You know, unless you're maybe like a state champion for a sport, you're not going to get that sort of that legacy, the alumni network. I mean, you go to him for, Patricia goes to him for Model Congress talk now.
I owe him half my career at this point.
And that's something that you probably wouldn't be able to get if you're were in a program that didn't have the commitment to alumni and the it is obviously to a testament to the fact that we're all still here. It's a special program that has shaped all of us in a pretty strong way.
I also think, like, I mean, like you were saying about, like, sports, I mean, the thing is about sports is that, like, it's based on, like, I mean, I'm not a very talented athlete. I, like, got better at swimming, but I'm never going to be an Olympic. Like, a lot of the legacy of sports will depend on if you have talent. Sure. Whereas, like, Model Congress, yeah, you need to be a certain kind of person, but, like, you can get better at Model Congress. You can become really good at it without, like, you know, necessarily, like you were saying, you don't have to be, like, the best public speaker. Mm-hmm. Most people, like, weren't doing public speaking before, and then they got into it. So, like, I think what's interesting about Model Congress is it's the intensity and, like, the competition of a sport, but, like, a lot of people who didn't do any athletic sports, like, still got to have that, like, competitive sense and, like, the sense of belonging to a team and stuff like that. So, like, that's, like, a really, but I don't know, it's, like, a really cool part of it, I think, as well, having done both. You know?
I just remember seeing a lot of names of our classmates winning awards, and you would always be like, they're not really, like, they don't talk that much. They're not really a politics person. You know, but I think that really does speak to, like, it's a very qualitative sort of thing when they're looking at how good you are at Model Congress. It really, a whole bunch of factors play into it, and it's not just about, like, I mean, there is merit in, like, you know, in athletics, obviously, in having a time to beat or something like that, but it really is a whole person development sort of thing. I think what's really interesting is that we're all coming in here from, like, different perspectives, different backgrounds, right? We're all in different career fields. But that was also the case when we were in high school, right? Coming from, you know, different interests, and that could be said about the larger organization as a whole. But you're right, Gio. I think our class, not just in Model Congress, but, like, in all
in general,
we just did the absolute most, right?
And there was a lot of us. Our graduating class was a larger size, relative, not significantly larger,
but
275,
and the largest is like 300, and the smallest is like 200.
Oh, really?
It's like the range.
And
usually.
Not only our whole size was large, our engagement, like the percentage of 275 that was engaged in whatever it was very high. There was a very small pool of people who didn't do school-based. Right. And the people who did things did some version of everything. So
I had a club meeting every day after school.
Right. Whether a combination of things. So yeah, I think it was a special time. Graduating class of 2010 did
Shout
things.
Out.
Yeah.
That's
made
why
things
my
happen.
coworkers think I'm psycho, because we continue to do as much as we did in high school, if not more. And they're like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why are you doing all of these things? You know it's okay to say no." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know it's okay to say no, but these things shaped me and changed my life. So if nobody's going to fill this void, then I have to."
Yeah.
And I love it at the same time. So
I think one question that if there are high school students listening, is how do you balance the heavy course load with, like, also doing all these things that you love? Because for us, it was like we all took APs, and then we also did Model Congress, and then we also did choir, and then we also did sports. Well, you guys did sports, but, like, how did you? What I tell them is just, like, the more you do, the more compelled you are to organize your life. But even so, the idea of your to-do list getting longer and longer. Do you guys remember, like, how you guys cope with that?
the busier I am, the higher I function.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's 100%. Also like we were talking about like soft skills. Obviously, this prepares you really well for college because like you're all totally on your own. You have to like take care of all your home time. Like I was talking about before with like organizing yourself for when you're at a conference. But like I remember when I finally got an open period my senior year. Only
every other day.
Only because I was taking 2 classes in the same period and didn't have a lunch. But I would say that like, I mean, I was continually surprised that like people who, I found this in my master's program actually, that I think that like having a high school that was so highly like, I was like, well, I don't have time to, screw around at lunch. I did do homework at lunch because after school I have to go to swim practice, and then after swim practice I have to go to Model Congress, and by the time I get home I need to eat dinner, and now it's 9 and I have about an hour before I can really get stuff done. That was back in the day when like we didn't have our own computers and everything. Like we had like one computer in my house for like all 3 of us. But anyways, and then like same thing in college. So then when I got to my master's program, people would be like, "Oh, I have so much work." I was like, "How? We have class like 2 days a week, and I'm working full time, and I'm working out every day, and I participate in a club." And I still have extra time. What are you doing? So, like, I think it was, I never thought of, like, oh, I'm going to join Model Congress. Oh, it's going to give me so much more stuff to do. I was like, okay, well, that means, like, I have to, like, organize my time and stuff. And to be fair, Model Congress, like, you do have to prep in advance. But, like, I think I did most of my prep, like, at Model Congress practice. Like, I didn't, like, do Model Congress prep.
Research.
Yeah, I didn't do that, like, after on my own time, usually. Right. So
Gio just drank a lot of Monster.
I did. That's all I did. Oh, yeah.
Guys, do things that you enjoy. Do things that bring you happiness. And I would not change any of my choices in high school. I would have just changed my outlook on them, and that I did things that were difficult, maybe partially because I thought I was supposed to do them, and now can see the value in them in hindsight. AP US history. But if you enjoy them, it makes it better. And if you are really putting time and energy into something that doesn't serve you and doesn't bring you happiness, drop it. It is not going to, bring you something that will help you succeed, even if someone's told you that it will. And I think that's just something in now our decade away of being from high school and being exactly like, I can happily say I'm exactly where I wanted to be in my career. Yeah. I have everything that I ever wanted. Being a PA, doing grad school, I have a great job, and I can look back and say, I did some things that didn't serve me because I thought I was supposed to, and they really didn't get me to where I am. So do things that bring you happiness or get you to where you need to be, whether you want to do them or not. But if they're not sitting in either list of this is going to get me to where I need to be or this brings me happiness, it doesn't have value for you. And that's going to be what weighs down your to-do list
stresses you out
and adds stress to you. So really, I probably could have audited some of those things better, obviously more in hindsight, but that is where you can, I think, remove the time constrictors. Is if it's not serving you, don't do it.
Yeah, and I think even there are always going to be necessary evils called classes that you need to do in order to graduate. And I think to be honest, I feel like there are definitely classes that I struggled through, but I don't remember the struggle, if only because we took the same classes together. It was more having that solidarity of people who were suffering alongside you, and could alleviate that burden a little more, And the thing is, I feel like even through those classes, we were pretty positive about our experiences. It wasn't just kind of let's all cry together and be sad. It was our AP Calc class, I remember that first period 1 and 2.
Shout out to my stats class, did not take Calc.
That's probably makes you one of the smartest people here. We're not doing that because I really don't remember anything from AP Calc. Didn't service me when I had to take the GRE, but it's
I remember it all
every day.
Every day,
and he showed up happy to work. But yeah, the camaraderie. You knew where people excelled at. We knew Gio wasn't going to be there for the first 20 minutes of class, so you had to have your notes ready to give to him for the following day. And somehow we still did better than you. So.
Yeah, people were pretty. I feel like that was also a stress reducer because, you'd be at Model Congress, be like, oh, I haven't done my AP English paper yet. I have to go home and do my AP English paper. Gio always Oedipus.
I did 2 papers for AP English, and poor Mrs. Ogren. But
shout out to Mrs. Ogren.
I did one kind of punishment paper a month late, and then I stayed up all night and wrote the Things Fall Apart paper, and I handed it in the day it was due with 2 other people, because almost everybody handed in their papers at least within probably the week that it was due, a week after. I just didn't bother doing my papers ever. Very few people handed them in on time. But I you did? Oh, good for you guys. All right. You might have been in the other English class, but in our English class, period but 7. Definitely period 7. Yeah. But I handed mine in with, I was one of the only 2 people I think that did the Things Fall Apart paper that day. She's like, what is this? I'm like, I wrote the paper. I think you're going to like it. Me too. I think I will like it.
But you could also go and, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I haven't done this yet. Someone else would be like, I did it. Actually doesn't take that much time at all. It was...
But it was 5 pages. That's a lot of pages when you're 17.
When you're 17,
and don't know anything about writing.
I don't think any of them were more than 10. So.
I'm just so struck thinking back to it. We were so positive when it came. I'm contrasting this now to, my students who are just such... maybe this is the sign of the times, but they're just so highly anxious and think that, the world's going to crash down if they get a bad grade on one test. I'm just dude, I don't even remember literally anything. I'm pretty sure I failed many.
But we didn't have this ticking time bomb called a cell phone.
Yeah.
I did not have social media in high school or most of college.
Or even how you could see your grades every 2 seconds.
Yeah,
my brother's I took a test today. Let me check and see if it's uploaded already. It's holy cow, we had to go at least the weekend where it's I'm not going to worry about it.
My email notifications alone give me anxiety and stress 24/7.
Turn them off. Yeah, I think we just lived in happier times. This is just 10 years out from...
I did a whole graduate program without looking at a single one of my grades. I don't know a single grade
and
that I
got. And you did fine, right?
I was
passed, so she's the PA now.
She did well enough.
I was inducted into the Honor Society, and the stress of knowing those numbers did not serve me to be a better PA, and so the amount of anxiety it caused me, I said, the numbers aren't going to make me study more. And so I had this kind of rapport with my teachers. I said, if I'm starting to slip, can you let me know? And I did not look at a single grade. And I'm now doing the things I want to do because finding out that didn't serve me anymore. Whereas my high school self needed to know, and like that was a sense of accomplishment. Getting through it is a sense of accomplishment, or should be. Like, take the things out that don't get you to where you want to be, because that's the end goal is what you need to get to. Sometimes the journey can kind of muddy things up if you don't have that positivity to get you through it. If you do, the journey's great, like friends like this. But if you're feeling like you don't have that positivity, whether you're doing it for yourself or you have it externally, you got to get rid of the things that you can control, such as email notifications. Like, turn it off. Like you said, like, do things that are gonna get you where you want to be.
But I don't want to paint it as like we were not stressed, we were like, you know, everything was amazing. Like, obviously everybody always says that. They're like, oh, high school was so great. And they're like, high school was great, but like after high school, and I was like, you know, I wouldn't say I was like a, I don't know, popular kid, but like we had like our friend group, like we had all our classes together, we had like choir, we had model congress, we had like sports, whatever. Like after that, I was kind of like, I have spent all my time with these same 15 people. And, like, I love you guys. But when I went to college, I wasn't like, oh, I'm like, I don't look back on high school as like, wow, I wish I could do that over again. I'm like, wow, or like, I wish I could go back to that time. Like, no. Like, I really enjoyed that time, and now that is over, and I am not sad about it being over. And because there were some things, like, I remember, like, the whole college application process, I was just like, I was so mean to some of my friends, and they were so mean to me, and, like, that competition was just, like, so intense. I never want to relive that, you know? But, like, I think it's really easy to go back and, like, be like, oh, this was such a magical moment, which it was, but, like, it was also, like, there's nothing better or worse about high school. Like, it was or model congress. Like, this was a part of my life. It is no longer a part of my life. I can look back on it fondly. I can also look back and be like, oh, there were some things that, like, I don't know about, or, like, I wish I did differently, or, like, whatever. But, like, I think it's easy to idealize it because it was so much fun. So there were some parts that were not as fun, or were, like, more stressful, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah,
when you get a decade out, though, you remember the good times.
Yeah,
and so
not
even
the bad
if you're
times,
feeling. I also highly recommend something I didn't think that would be as meaningful as it was the college rejection letter burning party we had.
Oh, fantastic and cathartic.
And I don't know whose brainchild that was.
Kia.
Well, okay, that makes sense.
Thank God for Kia.
And the idea that it was so symbolic and silly, but honestly being present together in that really vulnerable time of your life where you're getting told you're not good enough a lot, which is maybe new and it doesn't make you feel good, to just go and be in a place you felt comfortable on the beach for us and quite literally take some other person who doesn't know anything about you's opinions about you and put them in a fire and leave them there. And
even Eric,
Eric
Nemrick, who took he found the dean of admissions at Swarthmore, cut out his face, put him on an effigy, and burned him with the rejection letter. It was incredible. I mean, that really shows a deep level of. I mean, he probably had to go through that, years of therapy to figure that one out. That is incredible. Shout out to Eric. He's a PhD student at Harvard now. So take that.
So take that
exactly to all of that and putting it in the fire and doing it with friends.
Well, it's such like a weird point of your life, because people are really seeing you like at your absolute worst. Like, I mean, really, like being a teenager sucks. Like, you are changing in a lot of aspects of your body, your your feelings, and then you're also having to decide about your future, and like having activities like Model Congress you can go to and be like, like you said, we're still friends. Like, you guys saw me at not my worst, but before I was who I am today, I think I'm probably like a better, more well-rounded, reasonable person, and you still hang out with me. So
there's no reason with teenagers, and we only see that in hindsight. And
I think even as we're talking about how adult Model Congress is, it's one of the funniest moments. Obviously, this was not one of my kids, but I remember at some conference, one of the best kids from another school I saw was just running in. I think he had just taken the SAT or something, just an absolute mess. Right, was hungry and just really just a mess. And in that moment, I was like, this is the kid who up until then had only seen in the debate room being this boss. And then you see him and you're like, oh wait, he's still 16. We were all, despite all we did, we were also still 16.
Right.
And 16 doesn't change even if you're doing Model Congress and talking about the most pressing issues affecting the world today.
You think it's the most important time in your life when that will come in the future and you will have real responsibilities.
So try to be in the moment. Try to enjoy it. It's hard to do that when you're 16. You're like, this is the end all be all. But just like try to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I think we all turned out pretty okay, despite
For the most part.
right. Like, I mean, I think it's, again, I keep saying this, but I think it's so easy to idealize a program like Model Congress and like expect that it just turns out like, you know, these superhumans who go on and, I mean, you know, we have one superhuman here who actually does do politics and is amazing. But
Cole.
like, yeah,
Cole.
yeah. But at the same time, like, you know, I love where we are now and how like 10 years later we still walk back on those memories and think about how they shaped us. If you were to like, you know, is there one specific memory from Model Congress that you would say, you know, like really directly shapes a decision that you made or who you are today? I think for me, I was the only senior to go to Yale my senior year. I don't remember why. I think it was because I just didn't want to go to Princeton, and I just wanted to do Yale, and I was in presidential cabinet. I was very uniquely underqualified to do presidential cabinet. I was literally the worst person there, and I got the gavel. And that was like, and I understand why, because looking back on it, the chair was very much the kind of like, all y'all are high school students and you all think you're awesome and you're really not. And I think he was like trying to make a point to the other kids.
Spike gavel.
Spike gavel.
And like,
Gavel's a gavel.
right, no, exactly. That's why I still. I mean, and the reason why I tell that story is because on the one hand, you can really idealize your own performance and say like everything that I do is staked upon, you know, me being able to get this stand. Like if only I get the gavel, if only I get into this college, and everything will work out okay, right? That somehow proves, you know, something about myself that like I'm worthy. But you look at these things and you're just like, honestly, everything is just so arbitrary anyway. Like awards, everything, like Model Congress is such a qualitative, you know, assessment on what you do. You really comes down to like you're someone else's subjective opinion of you. And yet so much, and that the same could be said about college. The same could be said about getting a job. And so much of your self-worth just kind of rides on someone else's very arbitrary opinion. And like, you know, being in that weird space senior year of having this gavel and being like, I don't know how I got this. I mean, you know, I'm glad I have this to hang my hat on. But it just shows you like you just do your best wherever you're at, you know, and some things happen in the like, you know, and I'm sure that like having a gavel added some legitimacy to, you know, honestly, I was not very good at Model Congress when I was in high school, but like it kind of added some legitimacy to my presence there, you know, that like that somehow that work is symbolized in this very complicated object. And I think that's something that I'll carry with me. But what about you guys?
I think too, maybe a little bit of the opposite of that. What I'm most proud of was like not the award, but the speaking that my peers who I did spend time with, who did know me more than just subjectively, kind of voted me into being a good president. Like that was really powerful to me. That was where I did well. And so I was happy that not an arbitrary person kind of decided how I felt about myself, that I had this awesome group of people who was able to do that and support me because, like I said, I wasn't the traditional Model Congress kind of person, and they acknowledged that, and like I felt seen by my peers and advisors.
I would say like when we had our banquet in July, which was like after we had graduated and stuff, and we like, you know, all got to see each other and hung out there. Like I just remember like that's one of the few times in high school where I remember being like really hit by like, oh wow, like this is it, like it's over, you know. And like I'm a very like I can easily be nostalgic, so I was like at that point I wasn't though. Like I was really just like happy to be with everybody. I feel like I just remember like being like really happy about having that like being supported with everybody and being like, even if I am not like best friends with all of these people, like maybe or you know, like I'll just like stay friends with them and stuff. So I was just happy to have that moment to be like, wow, like, you know, we did it, kind of. Like that was a big moment that it's not really a Model Congress memory. I wasn't at a conference, but like, yeah.
I would say winning awards legitimized like your participation. Since I only did it for 2 years, and I think I only went to 5 conferences, and I think I ended up with like 3 out of 5 like awards. So that was kind of cool.
It's the highest batting average probably of anybody.
Yeah. I don't know, but it was cool, and I think like just put yourself out there, because I was literally petrified to like be on the same stage as you guys, not even the older kids, like my own peers.
But you also knew in other contexts. Like, it's not like you didn't know us before.
Yeah, like, I don't know if that helped. Like, we were, like, you guys are, yeah, I think the class was insanely bright and, like, so competitive and so good in all these classes. And, like, yeah, I took all the AP classes with you guys, but Cal, forget about the sciences, forget about it. I was, like, an arts type of person. So I just never felt like I was on the same playing field as you guys. And so when I think the first conference I did, I, like, out of nowhere won a gavel, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And that just, like, that gave me the confidence, because I did a lot of things in high school just to participate because my friends were doing it and I just wanted to have fun, but I wasn't winning sports awards, and I had a leadership position as a class officer, girl social, but it wasn't like I was president, vice president, anything like that. I think I ran unopposed. So,
shout out to Tommy, the true president of class of 2010.
Got stolen. Still, count the votes.
Count the votes.
Tommy V got robbed.
I want to say I was confident, but I probably wasn't. Like, I think within, our class, like, felt not confident at all. So I'm just glad that I did finally put myself out there, and that's why I try to urge all of my students to put themselves out there. Do not let anything hold you back. All of the, it's just my own negative self-talk that
We didn't make it
held me
easy.
back.
We were all kinds of competitive.
Yeah, we were really hard on each other, I think, too.
I was
But for the
oblivious
better.
to it all.
Yeah.
I think
But the
I was
detriment is
oblivious.
having someone feel on the other side of it, feeling outside of the elite when you were one of us from the beginning, but there was some barrier that was there.
Yeah, it was all like in my own head. So
No, it's true.
the note to self and all students is like, just shut that voice off. Positive mental attitude, PMA, all day.
PBA, PMA.
Yeah.
Focus and grind.
Yeah, that's
Eyes
right.
and teeth.
Focus and grind.
Eyes and teeth, everyone.
Snaps all around.
I think Princeton Moot Court was my favorite memory.
Peace de la resistance.
Yeah. I think just after kind of 3 years of being in that program and coming in as an introvert and someone who was really shy and wasn't very good at public speaking, that felt like a culmination of several years of work to get to that place and being like, wow, I can do this and I can go to this conference and be successful. Yeah, I think that's like a moment I won't ever forget.
You and Caitlin O'Neill?
Caitlin and I, junior year, and then it was Kia and I senior year,
Right.
because Caitlin and Delaram were a
Had
team.
beaten me and Kia, and that in the fall of senior year, and then I didn't go
I
to the
came-
spring. You
I
went to the
came
spring,
back.
and you
I
and
went to
Kia
summer, I
joined.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can say all we want about like high school being like just a phase in life, because I think that it really is. It's 4 years of your life. That's really all it is, right? But I think it's really awesome to be in a place. I don't know. I mean,
It's a training ground
yeah.
for real life in every sense of the way.
Yeah, and I think like when you're talking about, what are students capable of, right? It's really easy again to be, I don't know, I feel this a lot when I throw my kids into, I remember when I had so many reservations doing Model Congress with my students because I knew of how competitive it was and how scary it could be. And a lot of my kids, we didn't have, like, Model Congress is also the academic club at our school. And so not only was it Model Congress, not only was it debate, it was also, like, stepping outside of our school for the first time and then, like, actually putting to this, like, are you actually as smart as you think you are? And I was so scared of my kids seeing that and being, like, totally discouraged because they could be top of their class where they were at my school, and then they go to, Yale, and then they meet some kid from Horace Mann, they get crushed.
Yeah.
And they did. Like, it was like, I remember just that first conference seeing them come out of, it was like seeing a boxer, like, get totally destroyed. And then they come out of there and they go like, man, that was so much fun. I want to do it again. And I'm like, you sure? You really sure? And I just feel like, none of us, my kids, and we come from a school that's like, in a privileged area, but not an elite school in any sense of the word. And I remember, like, even immediately after leaving high school, thinking that one of the most valuable things that Patella really communicated was that he never made us feel like we were any less. He never really made it look like, yeah, you guys are up against these big dogs and you have so many He never, like, even had that reality check for us. It was always like, we are awesome, we are on the same level. Having that encouragement, having someone believe in you on that level is so important. You know what I mean? And so I'm glad that we had those experiences together.
Thanks, Patella.
Thanks, Patella. Yeah, so... All right. Well, thank you guys so much for reminiscing for our 2 hours on, such an illustrious part of our lives on a Friday.
On a Friday after Thanksgiving.
Friday after Thanksgiving. 9 a.m. What better thing to be talking about at this time? So, thanks again so much for coming together and being willing to talk. So it's been
thanks
really
for bringing
us. Thank you for organizing this.
Just to have us all together, for the first time after 10 years. I think this is the first time we've all been together.
I think so too.
I mean, we've all seen each other periodically.
We have our 10-year reunion coming up. Girl Social. Girl Social.
But, the relationships that we made there is still, here we are now.
Yeah. It's so easy to be jaded about stuff that happens when you're a teenager and for it to not to count towards anything. But I think coming out of it 10 years down the line, it's 4 years of the most formative, time in your life. It's not for nothing. And so I think we wouldn't be the people that we are today had we not had those experiences in the challenging environment that really, touched on many parts of our lives, not just the debate part, not just the personal part, but really everything. And so I'm glad for us for it. So, all right. Thanks so much, guys. It'd be great to have you guys again talking about some other topic of, related relevance, whether it be talking about Carnegie Hall, or, teaching things. You guys all speak languages too. So, travel, all those things. Seriously, I'm sure whoever anonymous listeners who are listening to this would love to hear your voices again as well. All right, thank you so much, guys. We will see you all next time. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed this special 2-part installment of the Bad Chinese Teacher podcast. Let me know what you think by leaving a review and rating on Apple Podcasts. It's always great to read your feedback. New episodes of the podcast are posted every Monday, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts to catch the newest releases when they drop. If you haven't followed us on social media already, be sure to do so. We're at Bad Chinese Teacher on Instagram, at Bad Chinese Pod on Twitter, and search a Bad Chinese Teacher podcast on Facebook. If you want to keep up with me, Patricia, as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Patricia Liu, on Twitter at Patricia SQ Liu, and you can read my latest writing at my blog, which is blog.patricialiu.net. All right, enjoy your Monday, and we'll see you next time.